So today I'm going to need your help. We're going to play a little game called How Long Can Pastor Brian Speak with an Upper Respiratory Infection? So I don't know if I get into a coughing fit, which just understand, first row, you've been warned. And if it keeps going, I'm pulling this guy out right here. We're in the middle of a series called To Topple the King. Last week we talked about how Elijah faced off against the prophets of Baal in this huge encounter. And then we are told in our passage this week, 1 Kings 19, Ahab went home and told his wife that Elijah killed all her prophets, killed them all. And so Jezebel put a hit out on Elijah. All the mercenaries, everybody in the army, put a hit on his life to get him killed. She said, may the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them. And Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. Where would you run for your life if you felt someone had a hit out on you? Seriously, where would you go? What would you do? Elijah, of all places, went to a place in the middle of the desert called Beersheba, which is, maybe 3-4 days walk. It's in the middle of the desert. It is a cross town where you go over from Cairo over to the Nabatean Empire and then the Silk Trade, or you can go up. But he went there for a reason, and I want you to notice how he reacted. Verse 3, Elijah was afraid, ran for his life, and when he came to Beersheba in Judah, he came to Beersheba and he left his servant there, meaning the person that he was discipling to become a prophet. And while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, he came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. First week with Topple the King, we talked about political mind control. We need to topple that. Last week, we talked about DIY Christianity and people concocting their own version of their faith. We need to topple that. What we're going to talk about today is toppling the king of a victim mentality. I really want you to invest yourself with me just for the next few minutes, because this is one of the key reasons we have so much pain in life. Because all of us in this room have been deeply hurt, and all of us have a tendency to play the victim. And when we play the victim eventually turns into what? The villain that turns around and hurts other people. So what we see in Elijah is we see 3 marks of a victim mentality. And the first one is just simply overwhelming pain. The reason people play the victim is because they got punched in the mouth. It's real. You hurt. Someone hurt you. You can't gloss over it. You can't make like it didn't happen. You were hurt. And so it's just, we have to acknowledge that. He came to a broom bush and prayed that he might die. Now, Elijah's not the only one that prayed that he might die in the Bible. Moses was like, God, kill me. Jonah, take my life. Job, please bury me. Jeremiah, angry with God that he didn't kill him. And Samson, let me die with the Philistines. And then what we see here is, he says, I have had enough. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. Now, if you haven't read the story by now, what do you think God did next? In our culture, we would assume that what God did next, as soon as he woke up, he looked at him and he said, Elijah, I just want to build your self-esteem here for a bit, right? I just want to encourage you. People love you. But that's not what happened. Look at what happened. All at once, an angel touched him and said, get up and eat. He looked around and there he was by his head, some cooked bread over coals and a jar of water. And he ate, and then he was so exhausted, he fell asleep again. And then the angel of the Lord came back a second time. Surely at this point, when he came back a second time, he was like, Elijah, come on. You're the best. Hang in there. But look what happened. Angel of the Lord went back a second time, touched him and said, get up and eat. The journey is too much for you. So he got up and he ate and he drank. I'll never forget reading somewhere that the recipe for depression is an active mind and an inactive body. And I think a lack of sleep, pain, running your life on adrenaline, Monster energy drinks, unhealthy food, binge watching Netflix. Lisa is a huge Wawa coffee person. I only get 1 cup a day. I'm like, just read it. It says 24 ounces. That's 3 cups a day. That's not 1 cup a day. What you have to understand is that, as Anne Lamott says, almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. After a few sessions of counseling a couple years ago, my counselor yelled at me. I was talking about, here's what I said. I said, my life sucks. And I listed all of these reasons, and she flipped out on me. She said, I don't want to hear any more of that, Brian. It's nauseating. You're playing the victim. Stop it. I'm like, shut up, lady. What? I'm paying you. What? But it's true. What I didn't realize at the time was I just had been running on adrenaline for so long. I just simply needed a rest. My mind needed a break. Everyone was not out to get me. Not everybody is out to get you at work. Not everybody in your family is bad. Not all your relationships where people are looking at you funny or they're talking. It's just you're exhausted. And it's really easy as a victim to go from I'm exhausted to I want to die real fast. So that's the first mark. The second mark in the way that you know you're in a victim mentality is that you will say stuff like, God abandoned me. Where's God? Now, we use a lot of different phrases. People will say, me and God, we're not really on speaking terms. Or if I go in that place, then the walls are going to fall in on me. Or this is a tough season for me. I don't really want to talk to God. What people, when they go through pain, one of two things happen. One is they reconfigure God to meet their pain. In other words, I'm telling you right now, there is no God in the universe that is loving and makes sense that would allow this to happen to me. That will allow this to happen to my kid. That will allow this to happen in my family. We look at the pain and we're like, that's not the God I worship. The other people will just simply reconfigure their pain so that they're not trying to constantly renegotiate who God is. Famous Christian author John Ortberg's hopping on a plane going on vacation, has 2 kids at the time. They were tired. It was the second leg of a trip, and they were tired and they hadn't had their naps. And so they were small and acting up and dropping peanuts and that sort of thing. And as he's sitting there, he realizes that he's losing patience with them a lot. And he said, the guy next to me leaned over and he said, I wish I had 2 kids. And Ortberg was like, so he calmed down. A little bit later, he leaned over and he said, so you can't have kids? And he said, no, I have 5. I just wish I had 2. And Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah done. She puts a hit out on him. He runs to Beersheba. Why would you run to Beersheba? Can you put up the map here? Why would you run to Beersheba in the middle of nowhere? You want to know why? Because he wanted to hear something from God. He needed some encouragement. And the 3 pillars of the Old Testament faith, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all 3 of them went through Beersheba and God spoke to them. And so God is like, I'm gonna go to Beersheba because I need to hear a word from God. Let me ask you, if you really needed to hear God's voice and sense his direction, where would you go? Lean over the person next to you and share that. Where would you go? Your house, go to the mountains. When I need to hear from God, I'm gonna go to the mountains. I'm gonna go to the monastery. I love monasteries. Monasteries are quiet. They also have good food, believe it or not, and all the nuns think I'm hot. So it's the added benefit. I would do that, or I would go to Mount Arbel in Israel. That's where I would go. But Elijah is like, I need to hear from God. And I showed up. And did God say anything? No. All he gave me was a bunch of stupid bread and water to drink. Where's God? And so he said, I'm gonna leave here. And he goes all the way out to Egypt. And he goes to a mountain called Mount Horeb. Now lean to the person next to you. Why does Mount Horeb sound familiar? H-O-R-E-B. What is another name for Mount Horeb? Mount Sinai. Now, why would he go here? Because it's like, if God's not speaking to me in Beersheba, I'm gonna go to the place 1,000 years ago where God showed up in a burning bush and spoke to Moses. So I'm gonna go all the way down there, and dang it, I'm telling you, he better say something. Strengthened by the food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God, and then he went into a cave and he spent the night, and the word of the Lord came to him and said, what are you doing here? And Elijah started complaining. I've been very zealous for God and all the elders and Israelites and God, and I'm the only one left, he says, which leads us to this third mark. You know you have assumed the victim mentality when you have accepted and you're living out a martyr complex. I'm the only one that does this. I'm the only one that cares about this. If I don't do it, no one else is gonna do it. And there's like an elevating of your importance. That if I don't show up, if I don't do this, then there's gonna be a whole bunch of people that are gonna be hurt. I'm the only one left. God comes to him, and Elijah's waiting for God to look at him and say, Elijah, you're the best. I love you. You are. You're number one. You're the only one left. And I want to commend you. That's what we all want, right? When we're in the martyr complex. I want some appreciation and some attention for what I'm doing. For my kids, for my spouse, from people at work. I need somebody to do this. What does God say to Elijah? He turns around and says this, bro, you're not the only one left. I have 7,000 people in Israel that haven't bowed their knee to Baal. You're 7,000 in one. I want you to listen to these types of messages we hear in our culture. We're constantly fed these lines. You have only one life. Make it count. God raised you up for a moment like this. Is everybody feeling a bounce in their step yet? Like, oh, I am important. What you do today echoes in eternity, which I'm pretty sure I just stole from Gladiator. This is your time. Step in the story God is writing for you. You are part of God's masterpiece. The entire universe has conspired to bring you to this moment. The world is waiting for the unique gift that only you can offer. You carry within you, and I love this, I found this quote, you carry within you the power to shift the very fabric of existence. Who talks like that? I'll tell you who talks like that. People who are trying to make a living off of people who have a martyr complex. You know, can I just be honest? There's some of you that are working yourselves in the ground for that next company, for that promotion. And meanwhile, literally right under your nose is the most important thing in your life. There's some of you that are just begging for people to give you this. Because somehow in our culture, we picked up this idea that, I am important. God, watch me, that sort of thing. Listen to the way God talks to us. Seekest thou great things for thyself? Seek them not. I've called you to do certain things, right? You are a mist that appears a little while and then vanishes. Jesus' brother James said, the life of mortals is like grass. They flourish like a flower of the field. The wind blows over it and it's gone, and in its place remembers it no more. You turn people back to dust, saying, return to dust, you mortals. Now, there's no doubt that we love the people that we're around, that we feel this intense pain when they're gone. But I want to ask this question of you. What is the name of your great-grandmother? Lean over the person next to you. What's the name of your great-grandmother and your great-grandfather? Go ahead. Now look around. Raise your hand if you know the names of both your great-grandmother and your great-grandfather. Look around. Lean to the person next to you and share the name of your great-great-grandmother. And if you're a Mormon that's visiting today, you don't count, okay? So you don't know unless you're into genealogies or something. What does that tell you? That tells you is that, man, God loves you. You are important, not because of anything that you do, but because you're his child. But don't ever get to the point where you're playing the victim, where you think that you are so important that the world is not going to move on once you're gone. 100 years from now, people are going to be living in the house where you live right now. They're going to say to themselves, what were they doing with the kitchen? Right? Look at this paint, right? And we all do that, right? But no one is going to remember us. Everybody that knew us is gone. And to me, that's the point of this story in the book of Elijah. We get to this point in the story where Elijah is completely and utterly in pain and burnt out. He's a victim. He's suffering, and it's real. And he has this martyr mentality. God, you got to help me. You got to keep going. I've got more to do. You've already used me in a great way. You got to come through. And then God looks at him again and he says, what are you doing here? That's a great question. Counselor asked me that one time. I was like, I don't know. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? In other words, do you realize what's going on internally with you, Elijah? So what happens is that God says, I want you to move aside, and I'm going to reveal myself to you. And he does a number of miracles. Why is this important? Why is this the whole point of the story? It's the whole point of the story because when I was talking to my counselor, and I was like, I am just so angry. I'm angry that I'm angry, but I am so angry. I'm furious, and I don't know what to do. And she said, Brian, here's what I want you to do. This week when you're in the car, I just turn off the music, turn off podcasts, whatever it is. And I just want you to ask God, Jesus, will you just sit with me? Will you be with me? Can I just be in your presence right now? She said, because there's no answer that you're going to get that's going to make this go away.
Thanks for watching today's message. Make sure to check out Brian's new book, Finding Favor, God's Blessings Beyond Health, Wealth, and Happiness. To sign up for Brian's newsletter, please go to Brian's website at brianjones.com.